Hi, I'm Alex Fryer with the Fury Group. We're here at Life Science Innovation Northwest 2014. On my left here, we have a guest, Iain Duncan from NeuMedics company. And Iain, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
Well, tell me what you're up to. What's NeuMedics up to these days?
Yeah, NeuMedics is a Seattle-based biotech. We're virtual, and we're working on a program for the development of diabetic macular edema. It afflicts about 2.5 million people in the U.S. today, and that market is supposed to grow theoretically by about 10% over time. The issue with diabetic macular edema is that it's the leading cause of blindness in diabetics and in the U.S. in general. Everyone who has type 1, type 2 diabetes will experience blindness as a result of this if it's not treated. The standard of care in the industry for this treatment is barbaric, to say the least. Patients have a choice between what's known as photocoagulation, where a laser actually burns the retina and fixes it in place, and that fixation allows the retina to continue to focus and people can see, but over time the eyesight deteriorates. The other alternative that we have is to go through what's called an intravitreal injection, where you have a choice of getting a needle put into the eye once a month at a price of around $1,800 to $2,000 per treatment. This treatment can cause 18 to 24 months in duration, and it's only about 40% effective. And the other option that people have is called corticosteroid, which is basically a steroid that is formulated in the pharmacy. It's not, most of them are not approved by the FDA for this use, and that can then be injected into the eye. It's less expensive, but unfortunately both of those treatments have safety-related issues that are significant, and actual fact can lead to further blindness, accelerated blindness in patients who are treated. It's considered to be about 40% effective by the industry, and this is the choice. You go blind or you get a needle in the eye, and NeuMedics program is a little more unique. We've studied the disease very, very closely, and we think we have come up with a product that can actually be used as a topical eye drop. So I ask you a question: would you rather have an eye drop to solve your issue, or would you rather get a needle in the eye once a month in the doctor's office?
It doesn't sound like there's very good options in the current treatment regimen, so that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah,
it sounds like
and we think so too. Yeah. We think so too. We have a very good compound. The compound has been tested preclinically in animals, and we know we can get significant concentrations of product into the back of the eye where the inflammation occurs. Inflammation is what drives the disease, essentially. It causes distortion in the back of the eye, and that distortion then leads to vision loss and eventually blindness. And so our product gets to the back of the eye, it stops the inflammation from happening, and fortunately we've had good results in our data at this point.
That's
and
great.
We hope to take it forward into the clinic.
That's excellent. Now, when you described your company, you used the word virtual, and I wonder if you could explain what that meant and sort of how that sounds like you're using innovation even in the construction of your own company.
Yeah, I've worked actually virtually with a couple of companies over the past 14 years. In fact, my prior career, virtual was the common way to work, and it's only, I think, recently that the pharma industry has really gotten a hold of the concept in a meaningful way. And virtual for us is that the last project I worked with involved a combination generic product. It was a company based in Chicago. And up until the time we filed our NDA with the FDA, we had 13 employees, and we had employees in San Diego, we had employees in Chicago, I'm based in Seattle, and effectively we are able to network by technology mostly.
Right.
Telephone, yes, that's one thing, but global meets, computers, Skype, multiple ways of actually getting work done. And
who has the lab space in that scenario? Who's actually
lab space is contracted out?
It's contracted out.
Yeah.
So you do the science and
Why invest in brick and mortar for a program that may or may not be successful? Once you have the infrastructure in place, once you have your product sold, you've got money in the bank, then maybe it's the right time to build into your business a infrastructure. But if you look at what's going on in the industry today, recently Teva announced that it's eliminating a significant number of their facilities because of overcapacity.
Really?
And so why, at this early stage in development and commercialization, why invest in bricks and mortar when that money can go into clinical development and R&D development?
Is this a model that NeuMedics is pioneering in some extent, or is this model, do you think, spreading throughout the industry right now?
I think
virtual model?
The model is spreading across the industry mostly out of necessity. Back in 2000, when I started co-founder of Chorus Pharma, we did a little bit of virtual work, but we were based in Seattle. We had a good number of employees, but funding was much easier to attain. So we went to investors with a great idea and said, hey, this is how much we need to do this program, and they would write the checks. Today, in today's environment, we have preclinical data, we have proof of concept data from other papers that have been written, and quite honestly, that's still an uphill climb to get an investor to buy into an investment with you. So how do you protect the capital? You go as lean and as mean as you can. And quite frankly, in our program, our strategy is to run the next 2 to 3 years with 3 people.
That's incredible.
From that, I have raw material from China. I have synthesis being done in San Diego. We have other lab QC and testing that will be done in other locations. All of that work will be contracted out, and I will primarily do most of that activity.
That's incredible.
It's just the way it has to be done in order to preserve capital, because it is so precious at this point and expensive.
And then take on this terrible affliction that people have that could really improve people's quality of lives dramatically.
Tremendous improvement to quality of life. If you don't have to go to the doctor to get an injection in the eye, if you end up having to self-dose, you can get your drug at the drugstore. The cost of the drug, simply because it's far more economically less expensive than a protein drug, the benefits are huge. And quite honestly, I have a family member who's afflicted with diabetic retinopathy, which is a similar disease to diabetic macular edema, and there is a significant amount of pain associated with each one of those intravitreal injections. So if we can eliminate that, I think we've done a great service to the patients at this point.
And what we're seeing with trends in diabetes is the growth in diabetes, with the projected in India and China, are truly astonishing. And are you sort of seeing that as, again, a potential
absolutely
need there?
I heard a report the other day where they said 1 in 3 Chinese nationals will become afflicted with diabetes, primarily because of their eating habits.
Incredible. That's an absolutely astonishing number.
There are 330 million diabetic patients in the world today, and that number is expected to double by the year 2030.
Wow. That is
amazing.
A tremendous
and
need and opportunity.
Oh, absolutely, yes. A tremendous need. And our goal is not to save the world necessarily. We don't believe that everybody is going to flock to our product once it's approved. But we feel that in our drug, in combination with other drugs, will be very successful in helping moderate or reduce the impact that the disease will have, and slow down the progression to blindness.
Yeah. You've been involved in this industry for many years, and so we're here at the Life Science Innovation Northwest 2014. Where do you sort of see some trends that you're seeing emerging in this industry now that gives you, your perspective will give you some insight into as we hit the next 2, 3, 5 years ahead? What are you seeing in sort of industry trends?
The industry trends, I think, we're getting narrower in our focus into disease modulation. We're looking at very, very specific targets. there's if you look at an antibiotic, it's broad spectrum. It attacks a broad aspect, kind of like an umbrella over an infection. If you look at the diseases that we have today, they're much more targeted, they're very narrow, and they go after specific targets. And that takes much more, I would say, aggressive science and much
risky
more
science? You're trying to solve one problem, and if you can't, you're...
It could cascade on you into risky science. There's no way of knowing, but certainly coming up with the targets and trying to engineer either a biologic or a small molecule for those targets is the challenge that's out before us. And there's always going to be winners and losers. It's very complicated. I tend to approach it a little differently in that there are a tremendous number of generic drugs that are currently marketed today that have what we call pleiotropic compounds. They are multifactorial, they work in different levels within the body, and technically they're approved by the FDA for one use. And unfortunately, many of the other side benefits that the products and drugs provide are ignored by the manufacturers because there's a significant enough market that they don't have to pursue that drug, or they move on to something else within their own pipeline. And in our case, in my career, I've taken 4 generic products, repurposed them, gotten patents.
Really? Wow.
And we have 3 NDAs. I've done 3 NDAs in the last 14 years, and 2 MAA approvals for those generic compounds. All new indications, all NCE type applications, and this is what we intend to do with our molecule for diabetic macular edema.
And you have an interesting perspective of both the science and the biology of what we're talking about today, and also the business side. What are you seeing investors are looking at right now in 2014 that people in your industry should be aware of?
I think to some degree the investors are unrealistic for startups. Startups in particular, generally it's seed money. It's not enough money to get the critical mechanism of action, proof of concept trials complete. And a lot of investors are saying, hey, show me all your data, show me the animal studies, show me how it works, show me the phase 1, phase 2 clinical trial data, and then we can talk.
And then they'll think about the money side of things.
And quite honestly, that risk aversion makes it extremely difficult. If you look at the period 2009 through 2013, the number of Series A rounds that were invested in were essentially could be counted in one hand. There are very, very few significant Series A rounds, unless someone from inside the organization was there. If you're focused on the industry and doing development work and haven't got the network in place with a lot of these investors, then it's a very difficult uphill battle to get established in the community.
Where's the role of the federal government and the academics, National Institute of Health, in funding some of these things that could help with the seed period, this really embryonic period for these companies as they're trying to prove the science? Is there a role for them? And where do you see that?
That's a good question. The NIH is theoretically set up to provide some assistance. It primarily focuses on academic institutions and academics pursuing a proof of concept. For small businesses like myself, it's very difficult and very time-consuming. So for me to file for an NIH grant, it may take me 8 to 10 months to find out if I've been approved, and then the funds aren't sufficient to get to the first phase of your study work. So ultimately, it's a nice idea, but it's not working practically. Small business loans may be a way for the government to go, but it would have to have some kind of legitimacy in the science and some hope that the product could be moved on into the clinic at some point in time.
But you're saying for companies like yours, the private financial market is really the main source of funding for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I need a significant amount of money to get to my IND and complete my proof of concept studies. I can only do this through private investment.
Through private investment.
Yeah.
So what are the things you want to take away from? I know folks are probably going to come up to you for your advice and your wisdom here at the conference, but what are the things you're looking at and looking for to be your takeaways?
From this conference, the beauty of this conference is it gives me a nice opportunity to network with people I wouldn't normally get to see. I work from my desk pretty much 14 hours a day, and getting out, I've become a bit of a hermit. So it's nice to be able to come to a single location with all of the resources that are here. So there are clinical people, there are legal people, there's investors that are here, and there's also partnership opportunities. So for me, this is a very efficient use of my time.
That's great. And you're going to be giving a podium presentation tomorrow. Can you give us a tease of what we're going to be discussing?
Well, we'll be discussing NeuMedics and our program. I think we have an excellent program. It's very fundable. We are not in the business of going commercial with our products. So for investors, we would provide an early out. And we think we can complete the proof of concept and clinical trial by the end of our third year, from start to finish. Historically, ophthalmic products have been sold off to big pharma, averaging around $400 million for phase 1, phase 2 products. And we feel that is not so much a quick return for us, but it gives investors an early out, and it gives a platform to large pharma an opportunity to accelerate their own programs. And with the market size in diabetic macular edema, it's a huge upside opportunity for them. In 2010, it was estimated that the diabetic macular edema market was $1.2 billion. At the end of 2013, the sales for Eylea, Avastin, and Lucentis was around $4 billion.
Yeah.
So it's outpaced the growth of the estimates that are there in a significant way.
That's fantastic.
So we feel our podium presentation will help bring a new light to a new opportunity in the marketplace.
Well, we're looking forward to that. Iain, Duncan, thank you very much.
Thank you
for stopping by WBBA-TV, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.